CO2. If we get too much oxygen, we die. If we get too little, we die. We're just at that sweet spot. And it is a delicate balance. Our planet has both land mass and water, and that's another kind of balance. We are land animals. We couldn't exist if it were all water. And this planet it's not like Mars, where there's little, if any, water whatsoever, and we couldn't exist. There's another balance too, and that has to do with the unstableness of the human population. It's unstable in one sense because as time goes on, wealthy people tend to control governments. Wealthy people are able to hire lobbyists, they're able to give to campaigns, and governments in turn protect the wealthy. They say, oh my gosh, we've got to divide things up in land, and you can buy 10,000 acres. Well, it's yours then. People can't go on it, and you can shoot animals and you can do all kinds of things. At any rate, that's another balance. And one of the major reasons for wars like the Muslims who rise up are the inequalities in income, the inequalities. And that's another delicate balance. I want to start off, well, let me just finish that up. There are these unstable balances, but on the other hand, we are an inventive and adaptive species. And maybe we can overcome all the problems with our science, with thoughtfulness, but can we? I'm going to talk for a little while about global warming. Global warming. This is from the National Geographic. Just an introduction. Carbon dioxide levels rise. Mercury climbs. Oceans warm. Glaciers melt. Sea level rises. Seas ice thins. Permafrost thaws. Wildfires increase. Lakes shrink. Ice shelves collapse. Droughts linger. Precipitation increases in many areas. However, mountain streams run dry. Winter loses its bite. Spring arrives earlier. Autumn comes later. Plants flower sooner. Birds nest earlier. Diseases spread. Coral reefs bleach. Snowpacks decline. It goes on and on and on. The Earth, in fact, is running a slight fever after enjoying relatively mild temperatures for about 2,000 years. There's been an increase, a significant increase in CO2 in the air and pollution of air, water, and land. It's predicted that the seas will rise. The most modest predictions are about 7 feet. And the more extreme predictions are about 300 feet. Seas rising, 7 feet, and more extreme, 300 feet. If all of the ice melts from the ice caps and so forth, it's likely to be the latter. It will take some time. it's likely to be the latter. There is an article by Frank and Schlinker in Science in 2016. Quote, extinction rates are estimated to be currently 1,000 times as high as those historically experienced on Earth. Some of you have heard of the Great Coral Reef. It's off Australia. Huge, huge. It's now 40% bleached. That's dead coral. And the best science minds say it's unstoppable now. It can't be stopped. It's going to be extinguished completely. And all of the 700 and some species that are surrounding it will die off too. We know that almost all of the large mammals have been killed off, mostly by man, but also by past extinctions too. This past winter, we had some garbage cans outside, and in very early spring, just as winter was waning, a bear came around, and it was around for several days, several nights. It eventually came up on our porch, ripped the screen out. We had a windows open, ripped the screen out, and there were claw marks on a table inside our window. The bear didn't come in. We were alarmed. Neighbors were alarmed. We call people, and they say, "Oh, let's do something." Well, there's the Department of whatever, I don't know, Natural Resources or something, and they said, okay, we'll come up and put a cage up. We'll capture him. What will you do? Well, we have to shoot him. Why? Well, you leave a bear like that out someplace, and it's just going to do the same thing elsewhere. How often does that go on, that kind of thing? You know, deer come on our property. I have a .22 pistol, and from a distant range I can zing them. It doesn't really sting them. It just stings a little bit. It's like a BB. You know, it's like 200 yards, and it's not going to... But they run off. I mean, it's my property. It's not the deer's property. What are they doing there? They're going to eat my flowers. My God, they're going to eat my flowers. And the rabbits and the... How can we put up with this?
We have pet bunnies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're innocent.
Well, that's part of the problem. It's me and you and so many others. What are some of the causes of this? Overpopulation is one. Overpopulation. We're now at 3.5 billion. Industrial revolution is a second, starting basically in the 1700s and 1800s. Deforestation. And finally, rich people and companies. I want to talk about, just for a moment, 3 examples. Automobiles. We have, on average, about, I think, 1.5 to 2 automobiles per family in the United States. that's common.
1.5.
And the rest of the world wants to catch up. China now is furiously importing and developing their own automobiles. And of course, automobiles add CO2 to the air at horrendous rates. Lawns are another example. It's the most grown crop in the United States, the lawns. You know, 150 years ago, even 100 years ago, it's like lawns, it was exceedingly rare for people to have lawns. They grew crops. Even in the city, you had crops on the grass. Not grass, you had crops. And you didn't buy food from thousands or hundreds of miles away. And think of that difference. Now, there are 70 million pounds of 2,4-D. That's Scots. And Scots want you to have the perfect lawn. The one that's just about that high, that's composed of a couple kinds of grasses. All the broadleafs are gone. And it looks beautiful, doesn't it? Well, do your part. Refuse to get 2,4-D and let the broadleafs be there. I mean, all that toxic stuff to protect, to make it look pretty. And that's what we're doing to the earth. We take over and then say the deer shouldn't be here, and we're not growing crops, we want to grow pretty grass so that it looks nice. Human beings are known for conspicuous consumption. Everywhere, in Europe and Asia, in the United States. Boy, give us a chance, and we'll try and rise to the top and show that we have a little bit more than other people. Kathy and I do it. It's like, it's part of the game. We're a competitive species. Meat use, too. Another item. We have just over about 1.5 billion cattle, just over 1.7 billion sheep and goats, and we have innumerable pigs and chickens and so forth. And of course, all of those species require horrendous amounts of grain and some little pieces of information. Where is it? Little piece of information. A person in the United States, in terms of the CO2 output that goes into the air, from what we consume and how it's produced, we use about 4.5 times as much as the average Mexican. 4.5 times as much as the average Mexican. What we use and produce, it's like, okay, In addition,
People in the United States, you mean?
pardon?
You mean people in the United States?
People in the United States, yes. Citizens of the United States. People from, comparing us to people from Bangladesh, we produce 99 times as much CO2 into the air, our citizens. And it's like, my gosh. One of the problems is that Trump and others say, well, wait a second, we can damp down the amount that CO2 we put in the air, but how about those developing countries? They're spewing out so much. You know, they want more coal power plants and so forth. They want more energy. They should do something too. Let's make it even. Well, it's not even. It's not even at all. We're wealthy and we strut around and say, others should do things too. Where will it end? Can we stop it? And remember, our government protects the wealthy. Can we stop it? I don't know that we can.
Randy, can you explain what you mean by that a little bit more, though, about we produce more CO2?
Yeah, we have more cars. We have lawns. We eat a lot of meat.
I forget what the beef amount of CO2 is, believe it or not, it's pretty incredible. So
Yes,
I looked
it is.
those numbers up,
It is.
the exasperation of how much.
Yes.
And methane, the other problem with cattle was methane.
Yes, it is. It is.
Well, and asparagus is, interestingly, asparagus is close to what it is for meat. So you have to kind of watch asparagus.
You're kidding.
So,
I just like.
remember this, people.
Well,
Look,
planet.
we're UUs. We try to be good citizens. What does that mean? Good citizens are supposed to be anxious and worry about things. We're supposed to feel guilty. Well, I'm giving you the guilt trip and the anxiety today. I'm helping you become better citizens. Isn't it marvelous? But maybe we deserve it too. You know, that's maybe we deserve to feel some guilt. And yet, can we really stop it? Maybe we're not responsible in the sense that our government is out of control and we kind of are too. So maybe it can't be stopped. Some of the solutions to the global warming. Boy. We talk about, some say that wind farms and solar are not enough. They can't be. We don't have the land mass or whatever. And, but maybe they could work. There are solutions to putting solar up in the sky, way, way up, past most of our atmosphere, and the sun would always shine. We could also have turbines in the jet stream. That's another solution. There are exotic solutions. There are many. And maybe science will save us. Maybe it will. And maybe we'll get to the brink, more closer to the brink, and our governments will do a shift. We are inventive, but also we protect the wealthy, and the wealthy say, hey, it's going to cost us too much to do all of these changes. The wealthy say, look at the profits for next year, not 10 years from now. Protect our profits. Okay. Another possible problem for humankind are plagues and viruses. The pale rider cometh. There are many natural kinds of plagues. Natural, meaning, human beings have spread. The Black Death, that occurred between the years 1346 and 1350. About 75 million to somewhere near 200 million were killed in Europe and Asia and Africa. The Spanish flu, back in 1918, killed about 75 million. And of course we've had AIDS and HIV, and that's killed a considerable number. That's human-made, human propagated at any rate. And now many countries have stockpiled some of the plagues and other things like anthrax. Anthrax is a killer. And the FBI has said it can be made in a shed for about $2,500. $2,500 and you can make anthrax, and it's a killer. Kathy and I invested in a company a while back that stockpiles vaccines in case anthrax comes or something similar. But there's problems with the stockpiles. Only some countries have them. Those countries that have them, it's like human error and neglect. They have vials of these vaccines. It's like tomatoes. If you get them too hot or too cold, the vaccines are ruined. And over again, we've gotten them a bit too cold and they don't work anymore. And they only last they have a certain shelf life. And the UN estimated that of all of the stockpiles, about 38% of them were out of stock at one time or another. A natural plague can occur, or a man-made one can occur, and it's not that difficult. And yeah, but maybe science will protect us again, and probably our species would not be extinct. There'll be people living in remote places that would not get the plagues or the problem from the anthrax and other invented. However, it's just, those are problems, and on the one hand, our governments are attempting to protect us. Well, they've got enough vaccines to do major government figures, so they would probably do okay. The rest of us a lot of us would go, and that's the truth of it. And huge numbers of countries just have nothing. If it comes, it comes. That's a worry. It's a worry. Another problem producing instability has to do with haves and have-nots, and that's robotics. Robotics. Is that being too exotic? I don't think so. It's creeping up, and it's continuing to creep up. My gosh, look around you, and where do you find robotics? You find it in the grocery store. When you go through, instead of a cashier, you can go through rapidly. Just ching, ching, ching. You find it in banks. You find it in gas stations. No longer does someone come out and do the pump and so forth. It's like you find it in factories. You know, boy, Ford Motor, you know, for a car that in the past maybe required 300 people, robotics have cut that down to like 20 or so. It's like, oh boy, oh boy. Telephones. You know, you get the robotic voice now. Even in wars, drone planes and drones on the ground that can kill a lot of people, and other drones. What's happening is we're pushed and pushed more and more to the middle class being replaced by robotics, and the lower class jobs, if they get too expensive, they're replaced by robotics, and fewer people in the world will have jobs. And at the same time, what's happening? Well, the rich are getting richer. They own the companies. And, boy, and if a company doesn't make more money each quarter, and especially each year, there's something wrong. Get out of that company. Well, how do you make more money? If labor costs are too high, you get a robot. And that increases instability because the richer 1% are the ones who continue to get richer. And the middle class in this country and elsewhere is diminishing. And eventually, maybe there will be more and more rage. Okay. Another problem, of course, is nuclear war. Humans are naturally aggressive? I don't know. Is that true? Maybe. You know, we're one of the few species that will, as a group, attack individuals or other groups and kill them. We have all kinds of excuses, we have all kinds of reasons, but we kill them. The one other species that is similar to us are the rats. They can get groups and kill other groups of rats. They do. There's hardly any other species that does that.
Ants.
You know, deer come together and they have these huge horns and they could easily kill each other. Instead they buck horns for a while and eventually one pushes the other enough and the other gives up. And the winner walks away. He doesn't kill. There are other species that kill in groups, and one are the great apes. They at times will kill in groups. They're similar to us, very similar. So we get down to nuclear. Well, so many nations now have the nuclear option. Palestine and Israel, of course, and Pakistan and India and the US and the UK and Russia and there's a huge amount of nuclear material around. Boy, accidents and what can occur. Some of you have heard of the Berrigans, maybe. Patrick and what was the other guy's name? David, I think. They were priests. And back in the 60s and 70s in that arena, they were concerned about the human propensity to destroy itself, and especially through nuclear problems, especially through, my gosh, we have all these planes with nuclear bombs and facilities that generate electricity. Well, they started a movement called Plowshares, and Plowshares meant, hey, you turn your weapons into plows and you plow the land instead of going to war. The Plowshare movement had 72 incidents over a period of 30 some years, 72 incidents on just about every continent. And one was as follows. This wasn't too long ago. It was in 85, I think. A group of Plowshares people went to a bomber base. They cut fences. They went into a hangar that had a plane that had nuclear bombs on the plane. They sang songs around. They put banners up. No one came. Finally, they shouted and hollered around, and they called on the telephone. We're here. We're in your hangar. We're here. Still no one came. They sang more songs and went outside, and after about an hour and a half, someone finally came. That was a nuclear bomber base. They got into a hangar. There was no one there. They shouted, hello, is anyone here? There was no one there. Hey, neglect. In more recently, 2012, I believe this was. I think that's right. It was a Catholic nun, 82 years old, and two elderly men got through the fence at Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge is a facility that holds plutonium. They had over 900 pounds of it. It takes just a pound or so to make a hydrogen bomb. They had a huge amount, maybe the biggest store in the world. Oak Ridge was called the Fort Knox of uranium. Well, this nun and two elderly men got through the fence and went to the building where they held the uranium. They chipped off some concrete. They put in big writing, war, not peace, peace, not war, excuse me. Horrible. Peace, not war. And they had vials of their own blood. And they put blood on the concrete. Eventually, after about 2 hours after their entering, people came. Hey, what's going on? Well, they claimed that they'd had so many incidents where they knew that someone, that the fence was touched or whatever, and thousands of them, and they just disregarded it eventually. Those kind of incidents are not isolated. They've occurred over and over and over and over again, hundreds of them. So, what could terrorists do? If we got some intelligent terrorists who knew how to, who took lessons for a month or so in how to use some of that atomic material, my gosh, it could be so easily devastating. One guy, a disgruntled worker at a nuclear power plant, got drunk and drove his truck through the front doors of the power plant and through a fence and the doors of the power plant. It's so easy. It's so easy. But we're protected and we feel comfortable because our government protects us. And maybe it's not the government. Maybe it's just young people in the service and they get drunk and, so many times around our nuclear silos, where we have the ballistic missiles. Boy, there have been many, many times in which drugs are frequent, people get drunk, and the silos are not taken care of. So, we have the possibility of horrendous nuclear accidents and perhaps terrorism. On the other hand, again, maybe the chances are remote that we would extinguish ourselves. Accidents can occur. If one horribly disgruntled leader says, I don't give a damn anymore, I'm going to blow up as much of the world as I can. But still, we might not extinguish ourselves totally. And if we extinguish many of us, maybe enough will live and go on. The Anthropocene. One of the things that isn't said, we're at a sweet spot right now in terms of the planet. Yes, a lot is dying off, but new species are being developed every year. They are. Not mammals, not the big guys, but new species. And the new species are growing at a rate perhaps faster than those that are being extinguished. Bugs and bees and so forth, it's like, well, yeah. So, Anthropocene.
Andy, define Anthropocene.
The Anthropocene, yes, I didn't define that, did I?
No.
My gosh. The Anthropocene is a term that defines anthropomorphism, the time that human beings have been on the planet, and how we have changed the geology, the climate of the planet. It's an epoch. It's we've had 5 major epochs in which there's been extinguishing of huge numbers of species and then growth, extinguishing and growth. And the Anthropocene, we're in a new stage in which human beings are making a horrendous impact on the whole earth. And we are. Thank you for asking me to clarify. want to talk for a little while about other kinds of extinctions. Some that we're not responsible for and we can't control. And one has to do with asteroids and comets. Back in about 1918, there was a huge asteroid that hit Siberia in Russia, and it decimated about 770 million square miles of ground up there. And that was a big hit. There have been bigger hits in the far distant past, one in the Gulf of Mexico that led to significant extinction of species. And I'm beginning to run out of time, so I'm going to shorten this a little bit. There have been two recent flybys of huge asteroids or comets. And now we have a lot of very small particles hitting the Earth. And they slow down from our atmosphere and they burn up. If you have one big enough, though, it doesn't just burn up. If you have one big enough, if you have one that's 200 feet across, it's likely to do significant damage. When you have one that's 2,000 feet across, it can horrendously influence the Earth. The Earth is tilted about 7 degrees. It wobbles a little bit on that tilt. An asteroid or a comet could influence that tilt and throw the whole planet off balance. And it's in the far distant past that's happened. It could happen again. They have cited an asteroid that's coming. It's supposed to come in 2032. It will be over 2,000 feet in diameter. And it's tentatively projected to hit the Earth. They're not certain on that, but it's tentatively projected to hit the Earth. It's been, the Ukraine astronomers found it. The UK agrees that it's there. Italy agrees, the astronomers, the United States, Spain, we've all agreed it's there and it's coming. And that's one that you don't hear much about, but it may come. It's known as TV 135. And due to hit the Earth on August 26th, 2032. Can we knock it out by missiles? Maybe we can. Maybe we can. We've got enough time to think about that at any rate. It's still a big problem, and that's okay. we could be extinguished by an asteroid, and that would extinguish, you know, if we extinguish plant life, we certainly extinguish human life. The more likely one, however, is volcano. We've had a lot of volcanoes. There was one major series of volcanoes in Siberia again, back about 285 million years ago. Remember that horrendous heat inside of our Earth. And it bubbles up now and then. The crust is very thin. There are plates underneath the crust that move. And as they move, the hot magna from the volcanoes can come up. 285 years ago, there were a series of eruptions in Siberia. And what happened was this. It's not just that the magma, the volcanic lava spilled out and covered large parts of the earth. What happened was it was so damn hot that it began burning the rocks that were filled with coal underneath, and it led to CO2 coming up and throughout the earth. That led to a major extinction. A major extinction. Man came after that. May have come before, but came after that. The giant dinosaurs came after that. We still have, of course, volcanoes.
Like sandstone?
Can that occur again? Can that kind of thing occur again? We don't really know. We don't really know. And that's probably the biggest possible source of extinction of our species, the volcanoes.
In the last 100 years or so, there was a summer, it could have been in the 1800s, but there was a summer that they said there was no winter. There was a huge volcano and there was no winter, there was no summer in the hemispheres. Everything went cold and
Yeah. It's when the CO2, you know, and the particles spread across the clouds, the sunlight doesn't get through, the vegetation disappears, and that's what happened that 285 million years ago. And most of the species died off. It was estimated that 90% of the ocean species died and 70% of the land species died. My gosh. And that's, as far as I know, those are only mildly predictable. They can kind of tell a little bit. They have some estimates. But a lot of the volcano areas in Siberia, for instance, are not monitored very often. That's where the most likely extinction would come. And if one of so the Anthropocene period is here. It's dangerous. It may kill many of us. It certainly is leading to a lot of extinction of many species. We are careless and negligent, and I don't know that we can stop it, but maybe we can. The others are still worrisome and may never come in our lifetime, probably not. But on the other hand, most species don't live more than a few 100,000 years. They don't live much longer. And there are all of the delicate balances that I alluded to at the beginning. We are lucky. We are lucky to be alive. We are lucky that we have enough oxygen. We are lucky that we have enough water. We are lucky that we have enough land mass. We are lucky. But it's all precarious balances. So, live for the day and feel guilty about the Anthropocene and try and do something about it maybe.